drop them in the chat, and I think we might even try to answer some as we go along. And we'll definitely take questions at the end as well. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we wanted to do a paddle tales about paddling with kids, and we're also a little daunted by it because we are not hotshot paddlers, and neither are our kids, and there are definitely people out there doing crazy stuff with their kids, and you can follow them on social and all that. But I guess like the message that we wanted to convey was just like, you know, look, we can do it and so can you. So hopefully that's what comes across. We did want to start with just the fact that we are in the ancestral homes and ancestral waters of the Coast Salish people, and there's some really inspiring stuff about like paddling and youth and canoe journeys, and you know those folks have been passing on their paddling skills from generation to generation for a really long time. So there's inspiring stuff going on there that I wanted to make sure I acknowledged. And we've also had a chance to just travel to a lot of other really awesome places and rivers. And there's a lot of stuff going on in different places with tribal people kind of getting their kids on the rivers. So a quick plug for the River of Return documentary if you haven't seen it yet. It's a really great one about the Middle Fork salmon.
Sure.
So you want to start?
Sure.
Okay, go for it.
All right. So with kids, the first thing we did was paddle before kids. And it's a big help for paddling with kids later on, because I got our skills up beforehand, and we got kind of a sense of how we're doing, sea kayaking, whitewater kayaking, whatever else. And so finishing off before kids, this is both of us as more friends in California on North American River. And here's just me on Grand Canyon. So a lot of really fun trips.
In a random boat, right? Like the,
Yeah.
the funny thing is, like, for a long time I was paddling with Steve, he didn't own a boat and he would just use whatever random club boats he could get his hands on, which turns out to be really useful to have that skill set.
Yeah. Here's Esther on the Tuolumne River.
Nope, that's the Rogue.
The Rogue.
Blossom Bar.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So get a Western theme though.
I do not recognize that feature.
Nor do I.
Nope, some river.
That's me though, my boat. And there's, I think, the Eel River.
Yeah, Coal Mine Falls.
That's another remarkable trip with a kind of floodwater paddling, but amazing boating.
And lots of random boats.
Yeah.
Borrowed boats.
The different sort of theme was sea kayaking. So Esther's more the sea kayaker by background. And this is a friend of ours, Andy Walters, in California on Yellow Bluffs tide race. So we took us there in sort of big boats on, basically whitewater essentially, but in big boats. Mm-hmm. San Francisco background. There's Andy again with Alcatraz in the background. And
so you want me to talk about this one?
Sure. Or sea kayaking.
Yeah. You know, so I've been doing a bit of sea kayaking, and Steve had some coastal sailing.
Yeah.
So we
That's why you don't spill them.
decided to do this trip in South Alaska, and it actually ended up being a really fantastic trip, partly because we realized that our risk management ideas were not completely aligned at that point, and it really helped us get there. So the trip started out just beautiful and glassy, and then we ended up in like some pretty interesting conditions throughout the trip, and a little bit of rock gardening. And one thing I learned about Steve on that trip is that he can tow another sea kayak into a 30-knot headwind about as fast as I can keep up. Also very helpful when paddling with kids. Should I keep talking?
Sure.
So Steve had a conference in Scotland, and we decided to try to get a hold of some boats. And so we were able to rent a couple of boats through some people I knew in Britain who were able to put in a good word for us. And of course, being a trip with Steve, we tried to go for the biggest tidal differences we could.
Dad, I think you only made it full now.
And Yeah, these were the boats. The hatch covers were just about falling off of these. It was a little not super confidence inspiring. But that was the first time that I had been paddling in tide races. And instead of working our way up from the bottom and being able to see what you're getting into, we just ran them from the top like a river. And this is a tide race called the Grey Dogs. Got to the bottom and there's a seal in the eddy line and the seal is just spinning. So like that was pretty cool. And then we did this is the South Fork of the Merced, the lower part that you hike into. We don't have a whole lot of photos of the two of us paddling together, but definitely like all the paddling we did together was really helpful. And I don't know that it's necessary for both parents to paddle to get your kids into paddling, but it certainly helps. Like we do know people who are awesome paddlers who grew up with just one parent who paddled. But for us, it's been really great to do it together, all four of us. Tea, I think.
Either out on the deck or still on the deck.
Hey, Luke, you guys are unmuted.
Just went out pretty early with kids. Here's Kira, about maybe 2 months old, I think.
I doubt it because we hadn't moved out of California.
Maybe 1 month old then.
Yeah, like a month.
So this is South Fork American, and just a fun time to start out with there. Here's Kira again, same trip, I think. And then here's again Kira, is now off to Vermont, my family's place, and some early boating experiences. And happily snoozing the canoe. And there she is in the canoe on the beach, under the tarp, and the sarong keeps on off of her.
So I know we have some canoe nuts in this meeting, and that canoe is an Old Town wood canvas canoe that was Steve's grandmother's and that he and his brother restored before I was in the picture. Pretty cool boat.
Yep, 1923 boat. I took off with my mom, and Kira's in the picture somewhere. She's on my mom's shoulder. And it's a fun trip, the same canoe. It's Lake Champlain.
She really didn't seem to mind the rain.
No.
So canoes are amazing for little kids because they get to move around and you can move around with them, and like, it's way better than kayaks really because kids don't really want to sit in their own little hole at that age, certainly, or anywhere close to that. So, you know, we kind of, one thing that we talked a lot about was just the idea of taking turns versus actually doing stuff together. And, you know, I know another thing that's happened, that's worked for a lot of families is just taking turns, right? Like one parent at a time paddles. And we certainly have done a lot of that. It's not been our primary mode, but there's been a fair bit. And so one thing that worked for us for a little bit there was just, we got our first sea kayak and one of us would take off and go for a paddle and the other would put the baby in a jog stroller. And then we would meet up and we would change clothes and then we would like reverse roles. So it kind of helped us feel like both of us were getting some fun. And then like the place we were renting came with this recreational kayak with this like giant cockpit. And so pretty quickly we kind of tried out the idea of putting the baby in it and seeing how that would work. And one of those, some of the people in this meeting were on an outing where we just pulled Kira out of the boat and she was, I think, asleep, but we picked her up and she just drained water, which, you know, basically baby in the bilge phenomenon. And so after that, we decided that she needed something waterproof. And so I made her this Gore-Tex suit, which was like super oversized at first, but it definitely worked. And here it is on a much older Kira. So she kind of grew into it because I definitely didn't want to make multiple of these. And there's like some, what are the ones, the Tuffos, right? Like there's a company that makes suits like this that are pretty great. And then it got handed down to Lillian, who is clearly enjoying it here. So that like basic idea of just like lots of fleece layers and a waterproof outer shell just definitely worked for lots of trips. So this was a trip that Steve took without me.
Yeah, this is Kira at Willapa Bay, to the southern Washington coast. Here's actually the same place a year later, and we had some snow on that trip. So we again paddled out from shore, out maybe an hour and a half paddle around the island to the landing area. So it was kind of a bit chilly, but turned out pretty well. So paddling out in the snow. Here's Kira and her friend Shannon playing in the snow, having a great time. Have a great time here. And here's camp. So again, it was snowing, but kids were warmly dressed. I wasn't actually. I got quite cold that trip, but the kids was fine. And Lily took me time. So here's Lillian just hanging out on her pad. More clothing, got a bit older, and the new solution was waders. So we have Lillian in, I don't know, basic waders. Kira's neoprene waders. And waders plus Crocs. And then on top of that, for a while. It's warm and pretty dry. Of course, it's trying to play it wet, so the belt kept the water out.
Hey there, we're having a difficult time hearing you. I think maybe you can mic on the other computer.
All right.
Okay. Can you hear okay now?
Yep, now it's good. Thank you.
You just have to talk louder, Steve.
All right, I'll talk louder in case. So here's Kira in her pearl jacket. And then the Owyhee was sort of a challenge for us. It was I think March, April trip. There's the Owyhee River in in eastern Oregon. And it runs as a spring runoff river. So it's kind of chilly. And day one was pretty warm. And day two turned colder and then turned into a kind of a chilly time. But we did pretty well overall. Heading down to the gorge. And kind of brutal weather, but kids are still happy and smiling.
So, yeah, most of the time. I still same clothing concept, right? So like the system that we learned from Ben, which is like the poor paddler's dry suit with the footed waders, and then in this case paddle jacket, because we didn't have dry tops that were small enough for them. And then the addition of a neoprene beanie, because it turns out that they make beanies, like these thick neoprene beanies for open water swimming that come in tiny sizes. So those were pretty amazing. And then eventually they got big enough to fit into a dry top. And you can notice like we're spending a lot of time on clothing because paddling in the Pacific Northwest, like that is kind of a huge consideration. The water is cold and the rivers tend to run in the time of year when the air is also cold and it might be raining on top of all that. So the clothing was just real kind of crux of trying to get the kids out. So here's Lillian with the same old waders, but now a dry top on top. And with this system, you know, she could swim and get some seepage, but not a ton of water getting in. And then I think Kira was about 9 or so when she got her first dry suit. And we were so excited when we found out these existed. But basically this was like $100 eBay find, which is pretty amazing. It's like a full Gore-Tex Helly Hansen sailing dry suit. And it turns out there's all these people in the Midwest whose kids do like dinghy sailing races, and they have dry suits, and those dry suits get outgrown before they really get a whole lot of use. And like that was just a complete game changer once we had once we were able to put a kid in a dry suit, it just really made a lot more paddling more accessible for us. So that's the clothing section.
Here's a fun trip we did. This Bound Lakes trip in British Columbia. It was a canoe, and it was a ideal trip for that time. Kids were 2014, so I guess age 3 and 5.
Mhm.
Even if it says right there. So, in the trip, one tradition is to be able to carve a little paddle and hang it from a string with their family. This is our end of trip paddle. And it's a great age range for us because kids could fit in a boat pretty easily and not be too small and too high demanding. So portages, there's Lillian in the boat snoozing, mid portage. There's end of the portage, Kira playing in the boat. Nice little little twiggy fire on a stove to make a cake for dessert.
Yeah, I love how the batter is already all over their faces before it's even baked.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad we figured this out, because basically we realized that we had an opportunity window that was closing, because once the kids got so big that we would need 2 canoes, there would be 2 boats to portage, and each of us would have to paddle a canoe. And we just thought we were going to be a lot stronger as a team if we were both in the same boat. And so doing it with the kids being smaller was really great. I'm really grateful we chose that timing.
See mosquitoes there.
I don't know whether people can see the mosquito on her hood, but
Yeah.
It's kind of large and in charge there.
That's sort of the trip. There's some chocolate on her face, mosquito on her hood. So that was a big part of the trip. But still smiling too, though. And some rain. Towards the end of the trip, a bit of rain, but still happy kids. They're still in the rain pants, fleece, rain jacket sort of era.
Yep.
For us. And filling some sort of a drink can and pulling it out. One key was packing really light, so it could fit all of us in the boat.
Yeah, I was stressed out because they let you put 60 pounds of gear in the boat, but their scale only goes up to 25 kg, which is not 60 pounds. And so we maxed out the scale and they told us we were done, and we were only at like 55 pounds. And we were like, no, we had like really weighed it all out to the detail because we were going to have to carry everything else on our backs. So taking turns kind of continued to be a theme. Another theme was that boats make good playpens. So this is a Kenasket Palmer State Park, and here's Steve and Ben getting ready to paddle the gorge section on the green. And it looks like Allie hanging out with Lillian and Brian hanging out with, maybe that's me there hanging out with Kira right behind Brian. So like definitely took quite a village to get us out paddling in those years. And that, we're just super grateful for that. And that's definitely been a theme. Along those lines, slalom has been really good for us. So just a really great opportunity to take turns on the water and also be able to be with the kids and just kind of all be together, but taking turns at the same time. And boats make good playpens in the parking lot at the Cedar as well. And then that's another shot of another boat with another kid also in the parking lot at the Cedar races. It seems like we've spent a lot of time there. And again, just like kind of takes a village because people really gave us a lot of slack and didn't make us gate judge when the kids were little. And it just seemed like we had our hands full. And so it just took a lot of people to help make that possible. And I think we were pretty thrilled once we actually got to be on the water at the same time. Somebody was holding the baby, and I'm not sure who. Should I keep going?
Sure.
So this was when Kira was 11 months. And we decided that we wanted to go on a multi-day trip. And so we took off to the Rogue. So here's Kira and her friend driving, well, pretending to drive to the Rogue. And what made it possible to do the Rogue with an 11-month-old, actually 3 11-month-olds, was a lot of hiking. So we used the trail as well as the river, and we just hiked everything that was over class 2. And then when we were on the river, we had the designated safety adult for each kid, who was just basically, their job was to just hang on to the kid, make sure they didn't fall in, or if they did fall in, you would be going with them and you'd be swimming with them and making sure they were safe. Not that that ever happened, but we felt pretty comfortable with that arrangement, just one adult per kid. And that adult isn't doing anything else, so they're not rowing or anything. And we went shockingly light on those trips. Like, this was like a little sil nylon 2-person tarp that I'd sewn. And you can see we're drying diapers on it because, like, all the pee diapers, we were just like rinsing them and drying them and using them again. So being willing to leave a lot of stuff at home definitely helped. So like the Rogue for sure, and like even subsequent trips, it seemed like the logistics and keeping everything organized was just the hardest part of everything. And so we got better at it, I feel like. And as the kids got older, it got easier. I think on this trip, I handed Steve a roll of duct tape and told him he should start labeling stuff. And he took that pretty literally. But here are some more photos from just different rafting trips where we really got to enjoy. Like, it's been great to have some like summer warmer water stuff, which we don't really get here so much. And this trip had my parents along to help wrangle the babies. Super helpful. And Kira turned 3 on this trip. And Lillian ate a whole lot of sand when we just plopped her down and like, you know, river trip life had to go on. And of course, there's a few extracurricular activities that can happen on multi-day trips that are a whole lot of fun for kids. And sometimes the highlight is just the food. Like, this was the last day of a trip when there wasn't much left and kids were eating cookie salad for lunch. And at this point, some of our trips, the kids are actually outnumbering the adults, and there's a whole lot of small craft, and it's a little bit of mayhem looking, but we have a lot of fun.
The sea kayaking's been fun too. This side is a canoe, but some sea canoeing too. Kids want us to eat the seaweed, but that's okay.
We were kind of starting to push the limits in the canoe, and we got to the point where we were like, we need something a little more seaworthy than this if we're going to be doing these saltwater trips.
Good thing is that kids are close by those, can be with them, can deal with issues, give them seaweed to eat. Because a canoe is much easier to move around in and pack stuff with. So that's great at first, even in the ocean, even with some trips. And more kids eating seaweed. There's now a sea kayak. We bought the sea kayak and did a bunch of paddling in Puget Sound area, the San Juans, and we fit just fine.
To put names on these. So this is Cypress Head on Cypress Island.
Yep. So we have two kayaks here. There's a single, the blue kayak on the right, and then a double really is the other one. But there's a center hatch designed for a person if need be. So we would do one adult in each boat and then a kid in the middle hatch. So kids are, again, packed pretty light because not less spare space, and you have your cargo space full of a kid. But we had it just fine. So more sea kayaking out in the San Juans. Kids didn't paddle much. We give them paddles sometimes. They wouldn't actually use the paddles and just would snooze mostly.
Yeah, so this worked as soon as they were kind of ready to sit in their own hole, but actually helping with the paddling was a long way off still.
Yeah. Some more sea kayaking. Found a crab on the beach. It's a lot of good fun. It's good fun to see all the ocean life out there. So next trip, this is again the taking turns theme. This says 2013. Ben got a Grand Canyon permit, and we got that 6 of us, all young dads, and headed off. So this is just of our family. It's just me on this trip, but then six of us total. The self-support trip. It was a fast and light trip. So amazing scenery. I haven't been there before. It's must go there at some point. Amazing scenery.
You did 7
Amazing.
days, right?
Yeah, 7 days. Amazing side canyons to explore on foot or in boats, as here. Go to whitewater. And then some long days too. So it was 7 days. So we had at least a few 40-mile days. This is now nighttime paddling. There's evening paddling into camp. And there's our gear. So it was 6 boats, stuff pretty full, but it worked okay. It was fast and light, so lunch is peanut butter and jam for the most part, Nutella. Dinner was rice and beans mostly in a pressure cooker. We had a poop tube right inside there. That's our poop solution. And we fixed things with duct tape, like Luke's shorts there. So it was again, we had 1 pair of shorts per person, about 1 or 2 shorts per person, and that was what we packed with. Despite being fast and light, we had a little climbing too. We climbed the, it's called the Royal Arches hike. So had some great expertise from Ben and Luke here to help us out. So we rappelled this amazing hike. And so there's a section, here's me paddling down lava.
All right, so here's the crew setting up for lava. That's Steve in the lead, white helmet, blue boat. Perfect on the bubble line. Get the D-wave, perfect.
So Steve got back from that trip, and he probably still owes me one, but he definitely owed me one. And I got invited to go on a curriculum writing retreat about 2 weeks later in the Gulf Islands, where my supervisor had a cabin. So I brought my sea kayak, and I had some really good adventures. Like my boat was on a colleague's car, and we just missed the 3:30 ferry out of Chemainus to get to Thetis, and the next one wasn't until 5. So I launched my kayak, and I decided I was going to race the ferry. Had to do kind of basically the crossing to the island and then through a little tidal channel and around to the other side. And I managed to arrive just about 5 minutes after people who took the ferry arrived, driving over the island and getting her in their car. So I was feeling pretty high on myself, did about like 7 nautical miles in an hour and a half. And then the next day, I just about got myself into some pretty big trouble by getting stuck on the wrong side of a tide race about an hour before dinner, and realized that I hadn't really spent enough time with the current tables to know exactly what was going to be going on. And did manage, found myself looking out at this, which was, a fair bit of water going pretty fast, and did manage to just make it through the eddy line and up and around the point and back. And then I went and looked it up and realized that it was like a 10 knot current, and I probably kind of just barely made it. Another kind of really great thing for pushing skills while not getting too far away from the kids was when we were in England, we bought a flatwater kayak for 50 pounds off of eBay. And it was pretty well held together by a lot of duct tape. It was super tippy and just a really, really great challenge because I hadn't really done any flatwater boating before. So got to do a little bit of that every day, and was great, like super sense of adventure while hanging out in Cambridge for some months and, you know, not doing any whitewater at that time. So we wanted to talk about boats and skills development for the kiddos. So one of the boats that was really helpful was we had a double whitewater kayak. And when the kids are little, you can put that boat pretty much anywhere you want. And so Steve in particular just would like surf it with tiny kid in the front and didn't seem like he was having any trouble kind of controlling the boat. As the kids get older, it does get a little more difficult controlling those, but it is a really great tool. And then, you know, I think one thing about kids is they're definitely not going to listen to a safety talk and get a bunch out of that. And so like all the skills development has to be experiential. And so here's Lillian just floating and, you know, she's keeping her feet up. So that's good. But just like a lot of time in the water, just like learning it by doing it was really helpful. And the kids pretty quickly decided that they wanted to be in their own boats, and they clearly didn't really have the skills to be in their own boats, but they really had the desire. So here we are with Kira in the canoe, and we're not going to go anywhere fast like that, but she is not giving up that stern seat. And here she is trying to row. And then, you know, she wanted to paddle her own sea kayak. And so she loved this stuff, but the skills kind of also needed to happen. And then sometimes you put a kid in a boat and you're just like, whoa, we didn't really intend for that to happen. So one of the things that we've done for skills development is just like local Green Lake paddles. And so here's kind of an example of basically what goes on, which is mostly trying to figure out whether you can sink the boat. Like what kids want to do with boats is figure out whether they can sink them. And here's another example of, you know, like little overcapacity on this inflatable stand-up paddleboard, but everybody's having a good time and we haven't sunk it yet. And yeah, here's a whole lot of people working really hard to sink Kira. And sort of lucky that our kids seem to like swimming, sometimes a little too much. And so a little bit of adult supervision definitely recommended. Definitely recommending adult supervision. And maybe some guidance, because I'm not sure this was a good idea. For sure, the kids got a lot out of this, like lots and lots of swimming. And so this was on the South Fork of the Payette, and the water's pretty cold. And so having her do stuff like this definitely helped us feel like we knew that she could handle a swim and be able to swim actively. And then at that same spot, the fire department showed up and they started doing like rescue practice in their dry suits. And so the kids decided to get in on the action, and they got out Lillian's stuffed animal and put a helmet on him, and we started doing some throw rope stuff. This is Kira and Steve punting, and Lillian trying to punt. One of the first boats, the first boat that we really could put the kids into by themselves was this little Jackson boat. And we did get a fair amount of mileage out of it. It probably wouldn't be the boat that I would choose as like the first kid whitewater kayak at this point, but it was what we had. And yeah, Kira did a little bit of slalom stuff in it. And here she is on the Soul Duck on our very first paddle trails trip ever. Little bit of pool time and some more slalom. So we did get some mileage out of that boat, but it was really not working quite enough for us to get on rivers because it just was tippy and hard to maneuver and go fast in. So we were super lucky to get this ducky. It was Ollie Royer's old ducky, whom some people in this meeting probably know well. And it's a single, but it can hold a lot of people, probably definitely more than one person. This was on the Cispus on a self-support trip where it hauled gear and people. And then pretty quickly we were able to start putting the kids in it together because the boat's just so stable. So they were able to really start to learn to read water and steer the boat themselves. So this is the South Fork Snoqualmie, and then the Clayalum. And we ran the sock with them in the double and the IK as a double. And then they did their first class 3 run together on the Cabarton section on the Payette. Super confidence building.
Sure. Our next big boat purchase was a couple of Axioms in kid size. They're fantastic. So after the Jackson boats, which were a good start, the Jacksons were not quite, a bit too play focused for us. And the Axioms were sort of a huge improvement for us in terms of boat style of being less play, more river running, and a bit edgy, but not too bad. It was the perfect kid boat. Just Kira and Axiom.
That's Lillian, I think.
Oops.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Lillian and Axiom. Just Kira, her Axiom. There's a whole lot of boating with those boats. There's more happy kids.
And teaching their friends.
Yeah. Here's Kira on her 10th birthday.
Here comes Kira. Oh, she is amazing. Go, Kira. Go, Kira. Yeah! Woo!
Thanks, Allie, for the video and the enthusiasm. Kira's first class 3 in that boat.
Yeah. It's pretty happy Kira afterward. And again, happy Kira somewhere else.
Yeah, then we came back here and she started running 3s in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
On the Sky.
And another boat of picture of Kira. Lillian.
Yeah, that's Kira running Lillian.
So that's the main Payette.
You just skip this movie.
Oh.
What do you want to talk about?
So here's first roll, one of the first rolls, not first roll, but
So it seemed like about age 10 is when you can start to maybe work on a role and expect it to work. At least that's kind of how it went for us.
then the kids outgrew the Axioms, unfortunately. So last fall, I tried the Axioms and they wouldn't fit anymore. So here's Lillian now in a fly.
Freon Fly.
Freon Fly. The kayak race. Same boat.
Yeah, and like I said, we're not, we're not hot shot paddlers, and we definitely relied on a ton of help from the very get-go. And so here are some pictures of people hanging out with our kiddos on river trips and really helping make it happen. Because there's just no way we could have done it without a lot of other people. And paddle trails has been a huge part of that for us, just like getting us out on local rivers and with people who really know the runs and are super skilled. This is on the Snoqualmie above Fall City. And yeah, so we have so many great pictures from paddle trails trips that have been fantastic as a family. Just really relying on the community to get us through. So my biggest piece of advice would be find your community to help you get out on the water and come paddle with us.
Yeah. So
That's it. That's what we got, right?
There's a question here on ages. I think it's probably age.
When they did the Cabarton, it was about
8 and
2
10.
years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just about 8 and 10.
Yeah, so 8 and 10 in Cabarton. So that was a ducky. And also, there's also starting of our axioms, about 8 and 10 for the kids.
Yeah, I think so.
And it
Yeah.
lasted about 2 years, unfortunately.
Yeah, they grow real fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Duckies are great. So the ducky came to us around the same time as the dry suit did, and they kind of went together really well, because the problem with duckies is you also get really wet, which around here is a cold experience. But yeah. What other questions do people have?
Let's jump into questions if you have questions.
Yeah, please. The kids, I think, are also available for questions. I think.
Can you stop screen sharing maybe? I don't know.
Maybe
There's a question on diapers and potty.
Yeah. Yeah, so rafting, we definitely learned to rig the groover on top. Like have it handy all the time. Diapers kind of stink because disposable diapers are like they soak up a ton of water. So swim diapers kind of. Yeah, and then at that age, we were also just doing a whole lot of taking turns. So not always, a lot of time on the water for the kids at that age. Thanks for that question. At what kid age? Yeah, at what kid age did we start practicing like dumping them out of boats?
Age 2, 3, 4.
There's actually pictures we didn't include of Steve dunking our like 3-week-old baby in Lake Champlain. There's like several iterations of that with both kids, because like definitely just like getting them wet was a big was pretty big from the beginning. Now, what we haven't done is like, lots of like falling out of boats and trying to climb back in and like pulling them back in and that kind of thing. We haven't done like super formal, like now you're going to, like we're going to do like formal rescues in a sea kayak and stuff like that. But we're also, the sea kayaking we're doing with the kids is just, at a level that's way below what we used to do, because like, we'd go out in the tide races in San Francisco Bay, and we'd dump people out of boats and practice putting them back in, and then get everybody back in the eddy before you washed out, like down further than you wanted to.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Says working on drown proofing now at 2, but flipping and crawling back in at 3 and 4 now. Yeah, you're on your way.
Yeah.
For sure. For multi-day lake trips, we've been considering getting a triple sea kayak. Yeah, I agree. I think like for lakes, I think canoes are pretty great, because you have like just way more flexibility in kind of where you put the people and the gear. And in a sea kayak, everybody pretty much needs to stay in their seat and stay put, or like you're gonna lose your stability. So I'm a big fan of the canoe.
We're little kids, like Lillian would not sit still for ages. She sits still for half an hour at most.
Yeah.
After half an hour, she's done. And the canoe can move around, you can wiggle, you can just kind of be active. But a sea kayak, I can't go manage her because it's too far away to reach.
Yeah, you can't get to them, so
Yeah.
you can't really deal with the
So
situation.
it's a challenge.
Yeah. 4 in an 18-foot canoe plus gear and kiddos and camp chairs. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Sarongs. Somehow we don't get a lot of use out of our sarongs in the Pacific Northwest, Allie. But yeah, on those desert trips, they come in pretty handy. Yes.
Steve and Esther, have you had any moments with the kids that were maybe too challenging or too scary or fearful that maybe you felt set you back?
Yeah. I don't know about setting them back, but like I think we get more nervous than they do. So we had a I don't know, I think my scariest moment with kids was when we had Kira in the fun one. And we went and did the class like 2- section of the Nisqually on a Nisqually cleanup trip. And, you know, like I was, gosh, did I have the double? I must have had the double.
Yeah.
I think I had Lillian in the double and Steve was kind of coaching Kira and he didn't realize how early she needed to start paddling to stay on the inside bend of the river. And she kind of ran into a log jam. So I was downstream of her and I was kind of bumper boating her. And Steve was just going paddle, paddle, paddle. And she came really close to just floating straight into the log jam and kind of hit the edge of it and ended up washing around the edge into the main channel. And it was just a really big wake up call to us on how there are so many sections around here that are maybe class 2, but they really require class 3 skills because you can't mess up. The wood just really ups the consequences. And so after that, we really just took it down several notches and realized like she can't make moves in that boat. So we can't be doing stuff like that. And a lot more time in double boats after that, for sure. Yeah, snacks. We could have had a whole section on snacks.
There's a fan though on finding your own toys. There's so many places. The beach is full of sticks and
Oh, that's true.
crabs.
Crabs.
If it's an ocean, and just so many fun things out there to play with. So we've playing light for us was minimizing the toys we bring along and just playing bring along. You gotta find your own toys and build little fairy houses.
Kind of worked for us.
Yeah.
Hey, Kira, there's a question for you. Rocks were great. We would just we would put a pile of rocks in the canoe and they would just dump them out like one by one. So Kira, the question for Marisha is, what's the soggiest trip you remember?
I don't really remember any.
You don't remember ever being super wet on a trip?
I don't remember too many.
What about the Hawaii when we kept soaking in the hot springs to warm up?
Yeah, that was fun. And
That
then
might have been. I don't know. Is that our soggiest trip? Oh.
And then the salmon was also pretty wet.
Oh, because you were in the water all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. The main salmon. Oh. Allie, I don't think it's lame to bring toys. I think there have been some pretty fun toys on our trips too, right? Like the water guns.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How about have you had a favorite swim in a rapid?
I don't know.
The Payette River. The Payette Rapid.
Yeah, that one was fun, but a bit tricky. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. There was that one where we were doing laps at dusk.
Yeah, that one. That one was
That
good.
was pretty
That
fun
one was
too.
really fun.
Upside down, yes, upside down ducky water slides. That's a pretty great toy. Yes,
Yeah.
another reason
Yeah.
to bring inflatable boats along. Yeah. Well, it's been close to an hour. Do people have any more questions, or should we start to wrap it up? What do you think, Ollie?
Yeah, let's give one last call, and maybe while we're doing that, if anyone wants to unmute and say thanks. I mean, this has been a great presentation. Thanks for the short little window into your journey. It's been pretty awesome, especially some of those videos were really fun to watch. And as a future parent someday, I hope I'll definitely take some of these tips into the future. So thanks a ton.
And I just want to say a huge thanks to everybody who has like helped us get our kids down the river. You know who you are. There's quite a lot of you on here, and just thanks for joining us this evening. There's a question here in the chat about paddling gear exchanges for kiddo sizes. Yeah, you know, and there's people in the club who used to sew all their own kid size gear, right? So like there are some like there's a crazy depth of experience in this club. Definitely takes some doing to try to find stuff in kid sizes. I started putting like once Craigslist started letting you save your search, so it would email you. That worked for like wetsuits and booties and stuff like that. And then yeah, eBay, you know, again, put on a search and be prepared to like wait a year, and that often seems to work.
To thank the Andrews family for putting this great show on. Thank you very much. Also want to acknowledge Tom and Sue. I know that there's Tom and Sue Wagner on the call. They raised a bunch of kids in paddle trails a long time ago. They're now adults and raising their own kids. There were quite a few families that were active in paddle trails along the way, and it's just so great now that they've all grown up, and it's great to see the next generation of paddlers coming along. Really is wonderful. So thanks.
Great points, Dave. Yeah, and there's at least one person on here who's a second generation paddle trailer, I think. Or did she just pop out? No, there you are, Celia.
Yeah.
You're muted, I think.
Yeah, 1970s, I was in high school. So yeah, paddling with mom and dad, canoe, and then we went to kayaks. But mom and dad still stayed in the canoes.
So this is Tom Wagner. So we did raise our kids through paddle trails, and Celia's parents are the ones that brought us into the club, and they were godsends because they led like 45 trips a year, mostly class 2, and we were on most of those. So they and others were like grandparents to our kids, just like you're talking about. So other club members are just a fabulous resource and help. And now, I mean, our oldest girl grew up, I mean, she's 50 now, but she was a whitewater guide with Osprey in Wenatchee for a number of years. They both still love the water, and the grandkids all do. So it's just a great sport to continue and help lead the next generation. So
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Celia. It's a great way to wind this up, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll about do it. I think I'm gonna end the recording here and end the meeting. And thanks everybody for coming. And again, thanks Steve and Esther for doing this. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, take care, everybody.